Hello, and welcome to Healthy Living. I'm Jacqueline Lapine, Communications Director for the Department of Health and Senior Services. We are in the midst of storm season, and already many Missouri families have been impacted. Having a plan is critically important. Emergencies can and do happen anytime without warning. The key is to be prepared. And to tell us more about that, I am joined by Brian Quinn with our Center for Emergency Response and Terrorism. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Well, I finally decided to make a plan. I'm not sure where to begin, and I'm a little bit nervous that I'm going to have to buy some extra stuff. How do I get started?
Well, that's great. You've done the most important step, and that is to decide to make a plan. The next thing is just to realize that emergency planning doesn't have to be complicated, doesn't have to be expensive. You'll have peace of mind when all is said and done, and you might even have a little bit of fun doing it. To help you in that process, we've developed a whole line of information resources under the theme Ready in 3. The first step is to make a plan. Second step is to build a kit for emergency supplies. The third is to listen for information when an emergency actually does happen.
Well, creating a plan, that sounds kind of complicated. How do I begin?
Well, that's one thing that we have done to help you in that process. The materials that we've created will walk you through the planning process. We have all kinds of information. One is a planning card that basically just has questions that you answer, things like workplace phone numbers, family contact information, things like where people are at certain times of day, if you have kids in school or a spouse at work. When all of this is done, you might want to think about a couple other things. One, to plan in case you have to evacuate, if there's a fire or a flood, what will you take with you, what kind of information will you need, and then what kind of plan do you need if you have to stay home, if you're required or encouraged to shelter in place, what we call in emergency response, the supplies you'll need and things like that. We have done a lot of the work for you in thinking through the things you need to plan for, and if you follow our information, you should be well on your way to being ready.
So I have my emergency plan. Next, I want to create a toolkit, right?
That's right. Step number 2 is to create a toolkit, and for that you will need lots of basics. The most basic item that we think of in emergencies is water. And you will need about 1 gallon of water per person per day. At a minimum, about 3 days worth up to 2 weeks worth. And so think about that, and you also, if you have pets at home, you'll want to put back some water for them as well. When you have your water, then you can start thinking about things like emergency food, medical supplies, and other items that you want to keep around the house. Next, you want to have things like flashlights. You want to have a battery-powered radio, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. You'll need things like blankets, liquid detergent and other cleaning supplies, and just some basic things like that. You also want to make sure that you have specialty items like prescription medicine. If you have infants at home, you want to make sure that you have the supplies to keep them going. Things like eyeglasses and even entertainment items like books, playing cards, board games, and things like that to keep people from getting bored. Again, we mentioned pets. You want to make sure that you have plenty of food and any other support items for your pets and plenty of that on hand. And then basically you just want to have some first aid kit items on hand as well. Antibiotic, ointment, bandages, antiseptic, pain reliever, medicine for upset stomach, thermometers, and things like that that you can be self-sufficient. You can treat minor wounds and illnesses so that you will need as little outside help as possible until help can get to you in the event of an emergency.
Well, I'm feeling prepared already. Yeah. Now we want to listen for information. Can you tell me more about that?
Absolutely. When an emergency hits, whether it's a local fire or even something as big as a tornado or flood, emergency response officials will want to get very, very important information out to you and your neighbors. And to do that, you have to be able to access that information. That's why we talked a little bit earlier about a radio. You want to have a battery-powered radio that doesn't rely on the electrical system to run. Again, plenty of batteries on hand to keep that powered. And after the emergency happens, you want to start listening and watching for information. We in emergency response will want to get information to you like if you need to evacuate your area, if you need to shelter in place at home, if there are special medications you need, where you can get those, and other types of information that really could even be life-saving. And you will need to have access to that, be listening very carefully, and be ready to respond to those recommendations when they're made.
Well, Brian, you mentioned the planning guide that's on our website, but I see here that you brought some other materials, including things like DVDs. Can you tell me more about the resources available to Missourians through our site?
Okay, we've developed a whole range of resources and information for a wide variety of people. We have information for faith-based groups and places of worship. We have information, resources for schools and places of business, all designed to help people walk through the plan, to think ahead about what they need to do and what they need to have on hand if and when an emergency happens that affects them. We have information in different languages. We even have information resources in Braille. Our intent was to develop a wide range of information for a wide range of people so that as many people as possible across the state of Missouri can be as prepared as they possibly can be for an emergency that eventually will strike their area.
Brian, thank you so much for joining us and sharing this important and potentially life-saving information. I know I feel more prepared.
Good. It's been my pleasure.
And for more resources on disaster and emergency preparedness and for all of the health information you need, visit our website, health.mo.gov.